right. So we are going to open up with prayer as we do, because it ain't just me that need prayer around here. Let me just say that. If you will, do the honors, our own Religious Affairs Chair, Minister Bridget Edwards. Minister Edwards, if you please.
Madam President, let us go to the throne of grace. Eternal God and Father, we thank you for yet another day. God, we thank you now for this opportunity for us to come together, Lord, that we might hear from the candidates on tonight. Father, we ask that you would allow us, oh God, to gain information that we might make an informed decision. Father, we ask and we invite your presence into this affair. Bless each participant in all the ways that they stand in need of. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. I want to start by certainly thanking our leadership team, Jasmine Shirley, Judge Holmes, and of course, as I mentioned, Minister Edwards. There will be others that are joining, but we want to certainly be good stewards of everyone's time, and we need the information. The voting is going on now. I must say that the numbers have been very disappointing. But we don't have anybody to blame but ourselves if we're not going. I believe about there's 150 people on Saturday. Now we're going to say, well, that was the first, and perhaps people did not know that we were voting because that's very unusual that you be voting on a holiday. And on the second day, about a little less than 200 did the same. And so we're out of excuses now. But for those who have not voted, and there are many of our community, we wanted to encourage everyone certainly to vote and make an educated vote. Tonight we will host the two Democratic candidates because it is nearly election time. Voting time is now. There is a Republican candidate, but he's not on the ballot, so we want to keep everything as clear and concise as we possibly can, the information. And so we will have from until 8 o'clock, which we wasted up some of her time, maybe to 8:05, Dr. Rosalind Osgood. And if you have a question, if there is time, we will consider what's the question, put it in the Q&A, not in the chat. And to my co-host, if you have something as well, just raise your hand and we will go from there. And with that, we will start with Dr. Rosalind Osgood, as I mentioned. Dr. Osgood, tell us who you are and tell us why we should vote for you as our next senator for Senate District number 33.
Thank you, Madam President Ellison, for the introductions and for this platform to all of the members of the NAACP. I am Dr. Rosalind Osgood, a lifelong Democrat and proud native of Broward County. Born and raised in Broward County, love Broward County, love the people of Broward County, have a strong family history in Broward County, and have had various life experiences in Broward County, both good and bad. And I'm running for Florida State Senate because I feel that the community needs another leader in the Senate that's going to be community-minded, community-focused, but a leader that is proven. Right now, we're in a very, very difficult time with a lot of turbulence. Our democracy is under attack. The way that we live every day is under attack. What we've experienced the last 2 years with COVID-19, many of us don't even have words to describe it. So I am a leader who have proven that I will lead the community and I will stand up in tough times. I've had the experience of leading through a school tragedy and shooting that changed the life of most of us in this county forever. I've had the experience of going into a leadership position with 12 F schools in a district. I've had the experience of taking over the helm of a nonprofit organization that was in a budget deficit. And all of those life experiences, my professional training with my degrees in public administration my Master's of Divinity from an ATS accredited school, my life experiences, and the relationships that I have with members throughout the community. I feel that I am the best candidate for this seat because I have proven that I have the skills and talent and willingness to engage the community. No elected official does anything as an individual person or single unit. You have to engage the community, educate the community, and empower the community to help solve the problems of the community. No one person can solve those problems. So I'm running for this seat, not only for myself to go to Tallahassee, but for the entire Broward County to have a bigger voice or a bigger presence in Broward County. I'm trying to fill some shoes of some legislators that have been in Broward County fighting for our community for a very long time. As the District 5 school board member, I've had the opportunity of representing a very, very diverse district that goes from 7th Avenue all the way out to Pine Island Road. The District 5 school board seat is encompassed of many different ethnic groups, many different religious groups, many different individuals, to include individuals that are in the LGBTQ community. That experience sets me apart from anyone else in this race. The community can look at my service before I was on the school board and while I was on the school board, and they can see that I got tangible results. They can see that the schools in District 5 changed for the better because we did that together. They can see that we fought to get resources for people that are HIV positive. We did that together. They can see that we took a stand when DeLuca Rose was beat up outside the district and injustice was taking place. We did that together. I have a track record of working with other policymakers across party lines to get things done in our community. I have a track record of working with other leaders. You have to be able to work with other people to get things done. I have a track record of working with various organizations throughout our community, various interfaith groups, and all of the things that I've been able to accomplish in the community with the help of the community. They are real tangible things that you can look at data. You can see the results that we've made together. So I could have stayed on the school board. I was comfortable there. I know the school system. But when this opportunity came and this seat opened up for leadership, I began to challenge myself to be a part of the solution and not just stay on the local level and complain about all the egregious policies that we get that restrict our voting rights, that attack our democracy, and do nothing about it. So I put my name in the hat to run for Senate District 33 seat. And I've proven to the community has trusted me. They have reelected me numerous times. And if they give me the opportunity to serve them in Tallahassee, together, we're gonna work together to make some changes in Tallahassee. And let me just be clear. It's not my thought that I'm gonna show up in the legislature and things are just gonna change, because that's not a reality. It doesn't work like that. But I will go there and articulate the perspective of our community and the needs of our community. Right now, as a school board member, I'm in the worst position that a policymaker could be in. I have a state legislator that have put a law in place that restrict my capacity to govern as a school board member, that I can't mandate masks for everyone in the school environment because, quote unquote, it is against the law. I was willing to have courage to stand up. We know that Omicron is spreading out our community. We know that many are not vaccinated. We have science and evidence that prove that when we put on masks and we mandate masks, we protect ourselves and we get better results. So I will continue to be a voice that will stand for what I believe is right and what I believe is moral. It might not be proper. It might not be the friendly thing. It may even aggravate some people, but I love this community and I love public service, that I'm willing to continue to offer myself to this work and ask the community to trust me again to represent you. And I'm looking for us to strengthen our relationship, that we would even do greater works on the state level. I'm looking to work with those that are transitioning out of office, those that are on the other side of the aisle. Sometimes people need to hear a different life experience, a different story. They don't have the same lived experience. Sometimes they just don't know the reality of the decisions that they make and how, when you implement them, they harm people in certain communities. So I am a trusted voice for this community. I have been, I will continue to be. And my record, the proven tangible results that I've gotten when you've said yes and given me the privilege and honor of serving you, speaks for itself.
Okay. Thank you, Doc. So let's get into some questions here. And full disclosure, we do have litigation pending on this next issue. We expect to go to trial, Judge Holmes, I believe, in April of this year. What is your position on HB1? HB1 is the anti-protest bill. What are your biggest concerns as it pertains to HB1 and how it affects our community?
Well, when we look at our history, a lot of what we've done in the past to make change is we've organized, we've marched, we've protested, meaning that we've taken a stand that was against whoever the authority or the dominant force was. It is a freedom for us to be able to express our concerns, whether we are marching down the street, whether we are standing out in front of a building. And all of those things are our property as taxpayers. That's what makes this bill so egregious to me, that we pay taxes for our roads, our streets, for different properties. And now we have laws that tell us we can't march, we can't gather. It's very interesting that we have January 6th that some of us call an insurrection. Many people don't. We have people marching because we saw, we witnessed, even though we were not physically there, we witnessed a police officer take his knee and put it on the neck of an African-American man for 9 seconds and literally took the life out of him. And we started to marching and we started to protesting, and it was termed a riot. It's very interesting, Marcia, when different things happen, depending on who's leading it, the terms that we use. We had protests here where people came in from outside and started throwing things at the police. The police responded. Our city, the city of Fort Lauderdale, got tagged with all this bad publicity from that. You have a lot of these agitators that come into the community and they do these things. I even remember the Sis Trunk riot. Sis Trunk used to be a very valuable business district for African-American people. You had all your doctors, your lawyers. You had the Little Palace there. You had Doris and Benny Boutique there. Dr. Morris, Dr. Sis Trunk, Dr. Merritt. I could just go on and on. We would love to go down Sis Trunk because it was where all the famous people were. Well, they wouldn't allow a Black man to go on the Dania Beach, and Sis Trunk was rioted. And for many years, I thought that we rioted Sis Trunk. Now I think a little differently, that perhaps someone came in and we had another attempt like what happened on Black Wall Street, where the businesses were burned down and they were targeted because they were owned by Black people. I think that our ability to protest, to march, is a constitutional right. I'm glad the NAACP is filing a lawsuit, because if we sit back and we do nothing about that type of egregious public policy, we'll see it play out in other pieces of public policy, and all those things that many of our people have died for will now be taken away from us. So I am adamantly opposed of it. I think it's one of the most horrible pieces of legislation that's come forth in my lifetime.
Thank you. And so one of the things that HB1 does also, Doc, is it says that if we are attending a peaceful demonstration, what we believe is that then just being there, and somebody throws a bottle or says something that overzealous cop may decide is makes it a riot, then even our children can be arrested and charged with a felony. And so, do you have any thoughts on how you would, in case we are not successful in this era where the governor basically owns the Florida Supremes his and Trump owns the U.S. Supremes there. What are your thoughts on how we should move forward, assuming that we are not successful in fending off HB1?
I think we have to start with looking at the process. A lot of times bills are put in place, and having taught public policy implementation at Nova Hostinga School of Business during the 8 years that I was a professor there, the implementation part of it is a nightmare. So if you're going to arrest people for rioting, you have to get the actual individual that caused the riot. So it's not fair to just arrest the kid because they were present at something. That's ludicrous. It makes literally no sense to even have that be a part of any bill. It's kind of interesting how we keep going back to this notion of any little way that we can arrest the kids. So I think there should be some conversations, some proposed amendments to that bill to start tackling certain pieces of it. I don't think we can just accept that it's passed and nothing is going to be done. I think that there will be opportunities for me to work with someone in the House and others in the Senate to try to propose some amendments to that bill to start moving us in the right direction. Because when we look at it and we look at how it's implemented, for example, we went through the anti-mask situation with the school, and there were a small group of parents who are anti-maskers. They wanted children to not wear masks. They were in front of the school board building. They were burning masks. They were peacefully protesting. They were not arrested. It was not called a riot. So when we think about these types of things, we can't use certain language to target certain groups or laws to target groups to try to control them or prevent them from a behavior that's a constitutional right. So I would be interested in continuing to work with the NAACP and other lawyers to look at some proposed language that we can begin to make some changes to this bill until we can ultimately get it defeated through some legal process.
Thank you, Duck. And so we have had a good relation. When I say we, I mean the NAACP, and I can only speak for us, with our Black state legislators. If you are successful, do you then pledge to continue that relationship? I mean, I literally had Representative Bobby DuBose on speed dial. He never changed his number from when he was in the community, when he became the city commissioner, and then to now becoming the leader. So is that a pledge from you that you will continue to work with us as well as other organizations? But I'm asking on behalf of the NAACP.
Yes, Madam President, certainly. Being an experienced school board member for the last 9 years, I don't see how any elected official could get anything done without having partnerships, talking directly to organizations, to constituents. You know, in the school district, I talk to the bus drivers, the janitors, the teachers, the principals, because you can't make policy that's gonna provide a mechanism for change for individuals to be successful if you're not talking to and communicating with those individuals. And sometimes the information that you get from constituent groups, civic groups, organization groups can really help you with your thought process and your decision making. It's what I call adaptive problem solving, where you get vast numbers of people with certain skills and expertise around the table, and you collectively solve problems together. Being a public person with a master's and a doctorate in public administration and having taught public administration master's program at Nova, that's one of my critiques of the discipline of public administration, because you have law enforcement, you have healthcare, you have education, you have government, you have nonprofit. And most of the time, they're all solving the same world problem in a silo. So when we come together and we sit around and we talk about solving the world problems, we understand why certain words don't work for law enforcement, certain words don't work for nonprofits, certain words don't work in education. But I think that we have to be intentional. And it takes a lot because, you know, we live in a time of social media, and social media has really created the next generation of sociopaths. So people are individually seeking to be superstars themselves and moving away from the basic principle of community and the principle of us. I don't care how smart I am or you are, we will always make better decisions and get more done together, thinking collectively. When we put our thoughts, our gifts and talents together, it builds our capacity where we have a greater reach. When we listen at people in different thoughts and different disciplines, it forces us to think critically so that we're not making a decision in a silo. So I will continue to do the best practice of collaborating. I don't like intermediaries, so I don't work with leaders in that way. When you're trying to get things done, you need to talk to decision makers. If you have a concern or disagreement, you need to talk directly to the person that could potentially change that. So I am committed to that with the NAACP and all of the current groups I work with, but I'm also going to be very intentional about building new relationships with groups that I have not worked with on the local level that I would need to work with on the state level as well.
Thank you. What is your position on charter schools? You know, the NAACP has declared a moratorium on charter schools. So tell us where you are on charter schools, Doc.
So where I am on charter schools is this, okay? The public school system is the only school system for many Black and brown kids. They don't have an option for charter schools or private schools because of transportation issues. So if we could take school systems and we can make them all equal, meaning that we have principals, teachers, and everybody with the same credentials, then I would be willing to entertain about a conversation about charter school alternatives and public dollars. Many people on the charter school argue that the charter school parents pay taxes, and that is true. And they should have a right to send their kids to whatever school they want. Well, here is why I disagree. If a principal is going to work in a traditional public school setting, and I'm saying traditional because a lot of times people talk about charter schools like they're not public schools. They are by the definition of the law. But traditional public schools, your principal has a certain requirement that he or she has to have. The teachers have to have a certification. There is a standard that the person that's going to be training the children, whether they're driving the bus, working in the cafeteria, that they have to have. In the charter schools, individuals do not have to have those same level of requirements, the same level of certifications. So as a parent, I'm not going to send a child, or as a policymaker, I cannot be okay with sending a child into a school environment where the persons that staff in that school environment are using the same public dollars and they're not required to have the same qualifications in order to procure their jobs. Let me just make it simple. Dr. Cyrus Pettis has been my dentist for a number of years. He recently retired. There's a very fabulous young lady, Dr. Lamb, that took over his office. Dr. Lamb does not have the 40 plus years of experience that Dr. Pettis has, but she has all of the credentials that she needs to be a dentist. I will not go. I love Judge Holmes, but I'm not going to Judge Holmes, and she's the prayer warrior. I'm not going to her to pull my teeth or to do my dentistry work. Even if she opened up a dentist office, I would be saying, Judge, where's the dentist? I'm not going to let you do anything to my teeth. And that's the same way I feel about the school environment. Now we're in a time where the reality of it is that we have to coexist with charter schools, and we even see money being taken away to give to private schools. So we can start by trying to propose legislation to have those individuals that are working in charter schools at least have the same type of credentials. I think that would paint a picture as to why, as a parent or as a policymaker, I can't make a decision to send a child to a school that's less qualified. Secondly, when we look at the traditional public school system, it is something that we should be finding ways to put more funding into. It is so egregious that we pay teachers, ESPs, bus drivers, and individuals such less wages. And a lot of people think that that's a school board decision. But the education budget is given to the school board by the state. And we've had seasoned elected officials from our communities that have fought tirelessly for education to get more money for education. And it has not happened. Every time dollars are taken away from the traditional public school system, it disenfranchises some black or brown kid whose only option for education they have is in the school system. Teachers are no longer going to work in Florida school systems because we don't pay them what they should earn. You have your bus drivers, all of those individuals, with education being so critical to the future and success of our world. We as a people have to change our thoughts about education and make sure that it's funded adequately and that it's funded differently. And now we know historically education was initially a field for women. So that's how people got away so long with not paying it, because this country continues to think that women don't deserve less money or we are less citizen. So I think that we need to stop adding charter schools right now. We need to work with the schools that we have and making sure that the people that are working in those schools are credentialed people, that they're certified, that they've been trained to teach. We need to support those people that have given their life to education and now find themselves in the midst where we got away the grandfather schedule and went to pay for performance, and their pay is stuck. So somebody working 20 years in the district can now have a new teacher coming in making the same wage. That causes a great inequity in employment. It causes bad morale. So there are some internal problems of school systems that I think my voice in Tallahassee would be a voice at the table that could speak to those things, because I have experience being inside a school system and understanding the inner workings and how sometimes the good things that are intended, like give all the starting teachers a raise to this amount, it's a good intention, but what about all the teachers that's been there working all the other years who are not at that salary range? So if I'm going to give the starting teachers a larger amount, then I have to do something equitable for those teachers that have proven that they are going to be committed to education, that's showing up for work every day in COVID, pivoting back and forth online and working just as hard.
Thank you. And let me just further explain the NAACP's call for a moratorium is because I'm sure there are some good charter schools somewhere. However, a lot of them are not good. They are not staffed by certified teachers. They don't answer to the same entity. They don't have to follow the same rules. They don't do the same reporting. And I remember Mr. Runzi walking into a charter school that was run by folk who look like me, where I think there was one adult and he was a janitor that was in the classroom. And so under his watch, dozens were closed simply because they had, they didn't have certified teachers, number one. And let's just say, just because you know how to read doesn't mean you know how to teach somebody to read. And so I don't think that we give our educators enough credit for their skill set. And we don't want folk, and maybe they are good intentions, I don't know. I'm sure maybe some of them are, but we want to make sure that we know that just, it may look easy, but being a teacher and having the skills to deal with folk is not an easy thing. And so we want to make sure that they certainly are supported. And, the constant drain on the funding from the public schools is an issue. I think that under this current administration, having to pull dollars away from public schools and give it to these other entities who can purchase a building, a facility, close down in a year because they're a terrible school or whatever it is they want to close, and just they've made enough money, and keep the building, sell it, keep the money. And so there's something wrong with this whole piece. We are on the same page as far as getting that done, Doc. Let's move to criminal justice. I want to talk a little bit about um, number one, civil citation and diversion. And what is your understanding of civil citation, and what is your understanding of diversion? Um, Go right ahead.
Certainly. So civil citation pre-arrest, and I think this is what throws some people. It diverts children from getting into the normal process of the judicial system. Instead of getting an arrest, they get a ticket, they get a civil citation. And that decision is made by a law enforcement officer. In post-arrest civil citation, the state attorney has the authority to direct a student to the civil citation program. I think when we talk about these different programs, they came up a lot when the Promise program became under attack because many don't understand when they use different words. Diversion programs have to be reported to the Department of Juvenile Justice, and now a law has passed and Promise has to be reported as well. But the Promise program was an alternative to external suspension program where a kid would not get suspended from school for a petty misdemeanor. These programs are ways to redirect our kids' behavior. They're designed to deal with the behavior or change the behavior of the kid rather than putting them into a criminal justice system that all of the data has shown us that putting them in that system actually increases their chance of reoffending and rearrest.
And so when it comes to juvenile civil citation, I know that the Judge Holmes and I have done just tons of work trying to improve juvenile civil citations in Broward County specifically. But it is up to the state in order to do that. So, what are your thoughts on how we could improve juvenile civil citation in your district?
So I think that we have to continue to have conversations. I think, Marcia, that we're going to have to find some creative entity. I don't know if it's something that the Southern Poverty Law School can do or some entity, first of all, to just educate everybody on what it is and how it should work. As an elected official, when you go to a position, whether you're the sheriff, the state attorney, or school board member, you don't necessarily know all the integral parts of everything that's going on in that organization. And certainly you don't know how it's being implemented. So there is a learning curve. I think overall, we have to work to do a better job at educating the community and ourselves just about what these types of programs are. We have to continue to work with the state attorney. We have to continue to work with the sheriff's office where training is done with the officers in the state attorney office, where we can all come to a common understanding of what we're meaning when we talk about these programs. For example, people oftentimes say that all we do is run around and harbor criminals. We don't want criminals to go to jail. Well, that says to me that they're misinformed about these programs and the intent of these programs and what these programs are. First of all, you have to be found guilty of something to order to be able to even substantiate that you are in the criminal justice system. When you're working with kids, we're offering a measure of grace and we're trying to prevent them from going down a trajectory that they don't have to go down just for a minor misdemeanor. So my plan would be to have the conversations around the table with leaders. I mean, I love the different advisory groups. I'm on many. We do a lot of great work. But then there are times when we need to get 4 or 5 of us together that we can really go through some of these things, sometimes line by line, and have conversations as to your thought may be different from mine. Jasmine may have a different thought. Judge Holmes may have a different thought. But if we never take the time to have the conversation, then we don't hear the other perspective and sometimes don't understand it. I'll give you one example as I'm I'm finishing this particular question. So I was on the school board and we got this item to buy new school buses. And I looked at the data and I said, well, we just bought a bunch of buses several years ago. Why would we want to buy new buses? This is a lot of money, da 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 da. And I voted no against it. A couple of weeks later, a bus driver was having a retirement celebration, and I was seduced to come to the bus terminal because they were having my favorite collard greens and cornbread. So I wanted to go to the luncheon. So I got there early because I didn't want to be late. And I saw this gentleman with this computer working on the bus. So I introduced myself. He introduced himself. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm working on the bus. I said, are all those buses out there broke? I mean, it was a whole bunch of buses. He said, yeah. I said, how long is it going to take you to fix those buses? He said, oh, it's two of us that do this kind of work, probably about 8 years. I said, 8 years? I said, well, what happened to the new buses that we bought so many years ago? Da, da, da. So I started having a conversation with him. And by the time I was done, I realized that I had made the wrong decision on voting not to buy those buses. And because I was on the prevailing side, I was able to bring it back and have that gentleman come in and explain to the school board from his perspective as a mechanic as to why we needed to buy those buses. So I think conversations with the state attorney's office and having a understanding of the actual implementation and what our ask is and how that plays out when you're actually trying to get that done, especially when you're working with other municipalities that you're not, quote unquote, the direct supervisor of. How do we accomplish those goals? And then how do we help get the desired results that we're looking for?
And so let's talk about a bill that is affecting everyone who is on the ballot today. SB 90. Tell us your thoughts on SB 90. And full disclosure, the NAACP is we're in litigation right now. I can tell you that the NAACP's piece has to do with line warming. And so tell us what your understanding is SB 90 and how it's affecting everyone who's seeking office as we sit today.
Certainly, it is probably one of the most egregious voter suppression bills that we've seen in a really long time. It suppresses the vote on every level, in my opinion. It suppresses the vote from how it's put in all these extra requirements of how you have to re-register for your voters registration, all this scrutiny around your signature, you got to have identification. It's just on and on and on. I'm a registered voter. I shouldn't have to re-request a mail-in ballot every 2 years, or, if I don't move, why would I need to re-request it? It's also suppressed the vote in the fact that if someone resigns to run, then the citizens are not allowed to pick their successor. They have to do a irrevocable resign to run, and then the governor gets to appoint someone to their seat. And it's interesting going through this process right now as to how some individuals can't see the bigger picture. They blame the individual that's taking the sacrifice to offer themselves for office on another level. Like I've been blamed for leaving my seat on the school board and allowing the governor to appoint someone to the seat. I didn't allow the governor to do that. When we stayed home in the last gubernatorial election and didn't show up to the poll, we got the person we got as the governor because we didn't exercise this very powerful thing. The most powerful thing that we have in a democracy is our vote. So the governor suppresses the vote of the people by not allowing them to elect that person. Just like we're in a special election now to fill these seats, those other seats could be opened up and the voters could choose who fill those seats. So what you see a lot of times with these bills is you see all of these amendments, or you see layers and layers of voter suppression and things to suppress our vote and take away our ability as citizens to elect who we want to elect to office where we get somebody doing a dictatorship and appointing these people or putting these people in office when we should be electing those people to those office. You know, you resign to run, it's irrevocable. So there was a time you could run, and if you lose, you could stay in your seat or run again. Well, that option has been taken away from you. Then you have to rerun again. So we running now, then we have to run again in August. This costing a whole bunch of taxpayers' dollars with the supervisor of election having to do all of these elections. And it's just multiple layers of voter suppression. So if people show up at the polls and their signature doesn't look a certain way, they could be turned away. If you wait to the day of voting to go vote, you don't have ample time to really procure or address whatever issue is going on with your ballot. Many people didn't get their vote by mail ballots in the congressional 20 race because they had not re-requested them. And being that we're in COVID and a virtual environment, we still have numerous older people who are not on the computer, who are not in the virtual environment. And the supervisor of election has a budget where he can send mail outs and try to educate and inform people. But a lot of times people don't pay attention to that stuff. And it's expected that people are going to miss it. So these things keep sneaking upon us. It is very important that we vote at all costs by any means necessary so that we can have people in office and in position that's going to be committed to a true democracy. And that's why when I'm asked on this campaign trail, what's the #1 issue right now in Tallahassee? I believe that it's our democracy. Our democracy is under attack. We saw it with the last president in his reign. And that's the #1 for me, because without the right to vote, you know, without us being able to cast our vote, about 4 weeks ago, I was in DC participating with Bishop Barber in the Poor People's March. And here I am, a Black woman, still out here marching for, you know, Congress to pass the Voters' Right Act, for them to pass the John Lewis Act. I'm still having to march for my right to vote when people that have a different color skin have that right without a march. It's not something that is getting renewed every couple of years for them. So if we don't protect our democracy, where we have the right to vote people in office that's going to care about people, we will never have health care proper. We would never have affordable housing. We would never have living wage as a way that we pay people. None of those things are not possible unless we vote people in office that's going to prioritize people and put policies in place that's going to govern a public that you truly have life, liberty, and justice for all. Affordable housing ain't an issue if you keep electing the wrong people and you don't cast your vote. They're going to continue to do what they've been doing with the redlining, the egregious rent prices, and I could just go on and on. So we're in a very critical time right now. Voter suppression is just showing up in a different way. I heard Representative DeVos, as he says it all the time, it's just Jim Crow in another way or another format. We're being lynched, Marsha, but we're being lynched with public policy. And it grieves my heart as a public administrator, and public policy is a lot of the work that you do and study in public administration, because public policy governs everything we do, from the amount of water that we use, what we pay for water, our electricity, our health care. It is a major part of our society. And if I don't have the right to vote, or you don't have the right to vote, to put people in position that's going to put public policy in place, that the world is a place where we can all equally live, laugh, play, cry together, and feel a level of pride and a level of unity about it. We're being set back every day. It's just lynching. And a lot of these bills, they target Black and brown people. We have to just talk about it the way it is. People have been talking about critical race theory. They've been teaching it in law schools for years. It's not something you teach in a K-12 school. Certainly you got to talk about race. I'm a firm believer that it's wrong for the public school system to continue to teach Black history starting 2,000 years ago instead of 5,000 years ago. When you start kids with their history talking about slavery, you devalue who they are as a people. You don't tell them, you fail to tell them about the strong pedigree that they come from of rulers and leaders that were doing arithmetic and algebra, that was creating pyramids, that was business owners, when you don't tell them about all of the successful things that people of color did prior to slavery, you start them in a place of thinking that, you know, this is what they come from. So it's only half of the truth. So we're going to talk about not teaching critical race theory, and we're going to talk about teaching African American history. Then we have to talk about African American history in its totality, not to teach the whole picture of the experience of African American people going, you know, back to Egypt and a lot of the things that came up out of there. And, you know, I'm going to try to keep church and state separated right here, because I know some people will be up all night if I really say what I want to say right here. But we have to be intentional of what we're doing when we're making policy, and making sure that that policy is not causing harm and detriment, or not disenfranchising a certain group of people or extending the privilege of another group of people.
Thank you. So let me ask you this, Doctor. So I was talking to one of our legislators, and one of the things that that legislator had heard was that it was you, Dr. Rosalind Osgood, who drew Pompano / Ely High School out of your district. And so to that, you say what?
Well, I wish I did have the power to just draw lines for redistricting. I would take care of a lot of the red line, a lot of the problems that we have. I don't know how any one person could have that kind of power. So when I got elected to the Broward County School Board in 2012, District 5 was a horseshoe of where all the Black people lived in Broward County. There was a redistricting committee that was chaired by Michael Rayner and several others who had been working on redistricting. They submitted some maps to the school board as to how that should go. And I was actually on the maps that they submitted. I was actually in District 3, me and Katie Leach both. So as the school board talked through the districts and talked through the law as to what you can and cannot do with redistricting, as you know, Madam President, you can't pack all people of same ethnic groups into one district to lessen their voting power, nor can you crack them, meaning you sprinkle a little bit of them here and there so that their vote does not have an influence. The thought was at that time is you would provide more access districts to minority. So you would end up where you had possibly a Hispanic district and actually 2 African-American districts. And so those maps were worked on through that committee with input from the community, and they were brought to the school board and we voted on them. So let me deal with your question specifically, because I've heard this erroneous lie, and it's kind of one of the most ignorant things I've ever heard, because as the only African-American school board member, it would have certainly been to my personal benefit to have a district that was 80% Black. It would have set me up really nice to have one district where most of the people that look like me were in that district. I find it offensive. I wouldn't do that to my community. I don't operate from parochial self-interest that I'm looking for the gains for myself or opportunities for myself. So the school board made that decision. I think it was like my 3rd school board workshop. So I was the new kid on the block, and that work from redistricting had been being done for 2 years prior to me ever coming to the school board. This whole lie and a lot of other lies continued to come forth during this time. As a matter of fact, this campaign season for me has been like none I've ever experienced before. It has been a campaign that has been filled with a bunch of lies and erroneous statements, the slandering of people's names, the attack of people's character, without any facts, without any proof. You know, I was talking to an attorney today about defamation and slander, and I don't know, you know, our past president had this problem where I believe way too many people bought into this propaganda of this fake news. We have to be truthful. We have to have some level of integrity. None of us are perfect, but we can't just outright put out in your windows and lie. Not if we're going to be leaders, not if we're going to be role models for our children, not if we're going to get the trust of the community. So I'm sure, Madam President, you can go back and pull school board records and workshops. They put everything in public record and the public on the school board. There's footage, there's tapes that will walk everybody through that redistricting workshop. This year, the school board decided to hire FAU, FIU to do the redistricting maps. They did the maps for us. There were not a lot of changes in the maps. I think a couple of areas were tweaked in the maps to allow the school district to have the fairest representation that it would have. So if I'm going to deal with the redistricting question, I need to just deal with it. So if I'm being accused of Connie Pompano out of the district and not helping certain schools, and I'm not that district school board member, it seems like that conversation would need to be had with that district school board member. As a school board member, I vote on everything. There is tapes, there is video evidence of my advocacy for schools across the district, especially for Markham Elementary, which is brought up, for Ely High School. I've visited Ely more times than one, even when I'm not the school board member, because I meet kids that I'm attached to. One of my students, Paige, graduated from Ely. She was in the nursing program at Arthur Ashe, a part of our mentoring program for Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Graduated that program. All she needed to do is sit for her RN license before she go to take advantage of her full scholarship at Florida State. I'm still in touch with her. So we have to look at the meetings, we have to get transcripts, and we have to look at the facts before we go make accusations that are not true against individuals at any time.
Well, as the vice chair of that whole over a year-long process, I knew the answer to that, Dr. Osgood, but me saying it and you saying it is two different things. When we were going through the process for over a year, it was no school board member, even the one that appointed us, could be considered in the process. But having all those districts packed, all those black schools packed into one district with your predecessor was not helpful to us at all. And it was actually a hindrance because everything was not fantastic. And so some changes had to be made. So I thank you for that. And so we have about 10 minutes left. So with that, I want you to tell us, Doc, anything that you need to tell us about your campaign, how we reach you, what's, I don't know if it's too late for donations, if it's whatever that you need, and tell us about your campaign and any information that you want us to have when it comes to supporting your campaign.
Certainly, you can find my campaign online at Osgood, the number 4 Senate.com. It is there, information about me and the campaign, a way that you can contact me directly. Many of you out there in the community, you know how to reach me. You can IM me on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Snapchat, I'm on Instagram. It's just been a delight. A lot of the contacts that I have received from people on Facebook just wanting to get involved, just wanting to help. I am running a campaign. People have asked me, you don't have people at the polls. No, I don't, because we're in COVID. And the same way that I believe about my kids as I believe about the community, right now I'm just real nervous about having people out face-to-face interacting. I want to encourage you to vote early, vote by mail. This weekend, there will be some people out at the poll. There's also been a lot of unprofessional and unacceptable behavior with people being attacked, people being threatened at the poll. I have said to my campaign, I will not tolerate it at all. The violence and all of that non-professionalism is not the way we act as American citizens. It's not the way that we conduct ourselves in front of our kids. And I know it's hard when we live in a nation that glorifies violence, but we are running a campaign with integrity. We're running a campaign that's focused on issues and solutions. We're running a campaign that we believe is representative of the great people of Broward County, whose shoulders that we stand on, many policymakers that went before us, many people that are serving in elected or appointed office now, or just leaders in their home and their community. I have students that are working with me on my campaign, and I will not allow anybody to be derogatory to those students, throw things or do anything at them, or we will take the necessary precautions to allow law enforcement to do what they need to do. So we are out here, we are listening. If you have comments, concerns, or ideas for how we can improve District 33, please reach out to me. I am open to listening because I believe in the people, Madam President. This community has stood with me for 9 years, and we've faced a lot of tough times, but we've helped a lot of people. We've made a lot of changes. And I'm looking to go myself and take this community to Tallahassee so that Broward County, there's a face to Broward County beyond the legislators that are there, that community members are in Tallahassee. People see our faces when they're making these policies to harm us. And I can't do it without your help. So I'm looking to build capacity in our partnership, in this love affair that we have. And we have some down times, but you have trusted me and I have been faithful. And I'm asking you to trust me on another level. Again, that's Osgood, the number 4 Senate.com. You can contact me there. You can contact me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. I want to talk to you. I want to hear from you. And I want your support. You can give campaign donations up until Thursday night at 12 a.m. We need your contributions, whether it's $1, $5, $10. We run a grassroots campaign. And there's even an accusation that somebody is funding my campaign to the extent, I know the number kind of changes every day. And it's hilarious because those of you all that know me know that I always run a grassroots campaign. I've asked many of you for $1, $5, $10, because that's the way we do it. And we get things done in that way. I'm a person of integrity. I'm going to do things by the book when it comes to managing resources. Anything you see up around town from my campaign, signs that were up that are no longer up, that were torn down by whoever is doing it. I'm not accusing anybody in my race of doing it because I didn't see them tearing down any signs, and I wouldn't stoop that low to make an accusation against somebody knowing that people do things. As a matter of fact, I was on Broward the other night coming from McDonald's getting a strawberry shake and saw some very intoxicated people just kicking down the signs. And I'm sure they don't know anybody whose sign was up there. They was just intoxicated. I couldn't tell if they was trying to use the signs to stay up or they thought they were dancing with them or whatever. But these things happen in campaign. But all of my campaign stuff is documented through an accountant, and we're running an honest campaign. And I don't tear down people's signs. I'm a pretty girl. It's not what I do. I don't have the time for it. I pay too much for my weed to get that wood in it and have to get it redone. And we're just looking to move forward in a professional way, in a way that's representative of the great people of Broward County, so that you can be proud of us and we can work together to get the change that we need. And I'm your champion. I've been faithful. You've given me opportunity after opportunity, and I fought for you at all costs. I was willing to risk it all to protect my babies and your babies and the students and staff. And that's not going to change with me because I love where I live, work, and play in this wonderful place that we call Broward County. And brothers and sisters, it's up to us to make a difference. Join me in this partnership. Vote Rosalind Osgood, Florida State Senate District 33 on January 11th.
Thank you, Doc. I invite you to, there are some questions in the Q&A. I'm going to have to move you over to the attendee side as the other candidate. I'm not sure you'll be able to see them. I will ask Jazz if you were you and Judge Holmes, if you were maybe copy and paste those into the chat just in case she can't see them. You have an opportunity to answer in the chat while the other candidate, and she will have the same opportunity to do the same thing. But with that, we thank you. and make sure that you stay safe.
Thank you,
We
Madam
appreciate your
President.
participating as well. Thank you. Jazz or Judge Holmes, if you will move Miss Terry Williams Edden over. And we need to move Dr. Osgood over to the attendee side. Okay.
Was I successful,
Yes,
to-
ma'am.
Okay, I moved over. Okay.
Yes. Miss Edden,
Excellent.
make sure we have the right one. Miss Edens, are you there?
Do you see me, Marsha?
Yes, we see you now.
I'm there.
All right.
You need me to lower my, okay.
Yeah, we can see you now. Can you hear us?
Larry, come forward. Yes, I can hear you. This good enough? You want me down or you want me high? Like
Oh
this?
no, you're good.
It's fine.
Yeah, I
No.
didn't think you could. We couldn't see you at first.
Okay.
Can you? As long as you can hear us, fine. All righty. Thank you so much. Terry Ann Williams Edden, if you will introduce yourself and then tell us who you are and why we should elect you as our next senator for Florida Senate District number 33.
Well, Marsha, I'm again, you said my name, Terry Ann Williams, and a candidate for the Florida State Senate. I have been a civil rights and community leader, not by rights of my own, but I started out at the age of 14 years old with my parents having a father that was a Northerner and felt Southerners needed someone to stand up for them. And he wanted to make sure all 13 of his children understood service. I've dealt with national and local leaders all my life. I'm a mother of 3. I lost my son February the 4th. I believe you know that, with an intracranial bleed. So I have 2 daughters that are living. I'm a grandmother of 3. I have been an advocate for change. I'm trying to make sure you can see me because I have these glasses on. I've been an advocate for change for many years. I've assisted individuals with Social Security, especially our seniors. I fought against injustices in our police departments. I fought against police brutality measures all my life. I marched with the George Floyd group in Fort Lauderdale. It was a peaceful protest. So they were not angry individuals. It was a peaceful protest until the officer decided to, I guess, engage with the young lady as she knelt down in the Fort Lauderdale area in the police department. I fought alongside Jesse Jackson to stop starburst in our school systems here in the state of Florida, along with Ms. Price, Ernestine Price, Levi Williams, the late Willie L. Lawson III, who was over the NAACP in North Broward County, and Furtick and Grambling was a part of that fight. We fought to make sure that our schools did not become segregated again once we get ready to move our students out to other neighborhoods. I've done EEOC cases for many years. I've mitigated concerns. I've mediated cases. I've represented teachers when they were unlawfully terminated. I started the quest, what you all now call the Promise Program, with making sure students didn't get arrested in our school system. That started with Dr. Clint Wright, Blanche Eden, the late Dr. Clint Wright, Ernestine Price, again, Willie Lawson, Ben Williams, who was the residing school board member at that time, and also working with the state attorney's office in the misdemeanor division. So those are some things I've done. I have a long-standing history. As I tell everyone, my life is longer than anyone's, bigger than anyone's paper, and longer than their pen. I've also done EEOC case filings for individuals that have been sexually harassed, people that was disabled and they weren't treated properly, people that were being terminated. Again, I've done those things in my life. I've continued to foster the life that is about civil rights and human rights. And when DeLuca Roll had his situation, I'm sure you know, I was there with you with the Public Defender's Office with Gordon Weeks. And I also participated with the family in Tamarack and North Lauderdale when they had those marches. I've also worked with Congressman Alcee Hastings during his time, along with Robert Wexler. That was before a lot of people, you know, they knew these individuals. I worked with them. I wasn't a policy maker, but I made sure there was concerns that we had. They became and were through them, policies were made on the federal and state levels with our state representatives. As we know that a lot of them are not going to be continuous. This thing, this writing is in my face. I hope you can see me. Work with state legislators as well and trying to craft laws that they can go back and they can put together. So it doesn't mean that, you know, sometimes people look at you and saying you're not an elected official. Well, it takes a push. And when you've been involved in civil and human rights, we've always done this. I did it with E. Pat Larkins, one of my family members. I used to meet with him at the Minority Building down on 27th in Fort Lauderdale 2 or 3 times a week to make sure we can talk about some concerns, even on local and state levels that we can get done. So I've done those things in my life. I've advocated for students to have books in their schools. I even used my own children when they lived in Parkland to make sure that when Reverend Jackson, they wanted to see the difference in how the schools were being treated. I allowed them to use Trey. He went to the BCC school and also Blanche Ely. My kids graduated in a 3-year tier opposed to 4 years, but they desired to stay in school. So in doing that, I allowed them to become a part of civil rights. I have a master's in managing educational programs. I have a master's in public administration. I am a business owner of a consultant business, Edden Consultant. I've had that since 2001. I opened up the first free reading programs in schools throughout the county through that business, Learning for Enrichment Development Institute. And I moved forward in a lot of areas to make sure things were happening. And as a business owner, working with small business individuals, I've done bylaws for them, articles of incorporations, making sure that they can have sustainable lives. Because every time somebody, just because you graduate, everybody don't go to college. They have opportunities that they want to deal with themselves outside of that spectrum. So I've always been a visible person. I've always stood up for things that were not pretty. Even now, I'm fighting for a cemetery at Westview Cemetery, and it's a very difficult task for me, being that my son is about 10 minutes down the road at Forest Lawn, and to visit a cemetery because somebody wanted to sell it. And once I got involved, then my race got attacked for being involved in that particular aspect of making sure the burial ground remains in that city of Pompano Beach. So my quest does not stop with Pompano. I've lived in I lived in some of the best neighborhoods. I've never had any issues as such. I've also worked very hard. I go to jails when people were being arrested and they call my phone or somehow somebody gets in touch with me. I had a relationship with law enforcement where I can just go there and have a conversation and that person is released to me. So that's somebody, not only a leader, but a soldier for justice and fairness. And again, like I said, I fought for educational issues, or not just on the local level. I fought for students to be able to put in schools. In fact, I made sure some of them can get a full scholarships because I also did grant funding programs for them to make sure that they can do that the fastest. I've always opened myself up to make sure that I can serve somebody. And I did that with Senator Chris Smith when he ran. That was during the time my son acquired cancer at Bethune-Cookman University. It was always a pleasant race and a ride for us because he was the first person I told about my son's debilitating concern and that I would have to get out that race. But I didn't do that. I just left commercials here, moved to New York City to make sure he can get what he needs. And that was with the blessing of him and Congressman Alcee Hastings. So I'm not a newcomer to the district at all. I didn't just reside in Pompano. I didn't just help that area. I served Margate, Tamarack, Sunrise, Plantation, even where you are. When individuals, when they first started out, when young men were in the LGBTQ and they were being shot in or harmed in your area, myself and Willie Lawson, we partook in that, along with Miami and in Palm Beach County. So my reign is quite longer than where it is today. And when you want a leader to serve you, I'm not going to go to Tallahassee and promise you that I'm going to be the bully of the pulpit, I can't do that. My goal would be to mitigate, to be able to make sure I can go across party lines, which I know I can. I do have relationships with Republicans and Democrats and independents alike. And you want to make sure a person can go in and coddle. You can't get everything. So let's not be fooled. You have the Republicans controlling the House and the Senate. And the only way you're going to be able to get something done, you have to be able to mediate and mitigate whatever it is you want to get for somebody. We're not going to get everything we want in that aspect of being the next senator for this district. But I want to say this too. I've served in a position where I've always helped people to get into elected seats. I've always helped the little man to get in power. Some of them in this race have not garnered that same respect or that help, but we're okay with that now. So when people don't understand, when we get elected, I'm accountable to the people. You are my HR department. You are the people that I have to serve. It's not a personal gain for me. And in fact, I believe in term limits. I don't believe that I want to die in the seat, or I should. That torch should be passed to someone else with new ideas where they can move forward and make sustainable laws as well. So I know that's bad for me to say. A lot of people don't like it, but I believe in it. I believe that we must have term limits and the electoral process and dealing with individuals. So I've served, like I said, my life it'd be too long to talk about, but I want to just give you some points about the things I've done. I was adjudicator for the Department of Economic Opportunity, helping those that were denied their unemployment. It was my job to adjudicate their cases to make sure that they can have a payment given to them. I've worked in the Department of Children and Family, which is now the Department of DCF, with voluntary family services, putting children into shelter homes. That wasn't the best part of my job. And also assisting with parents so they can have the programs or get into programs to be able to get their children back, making sure they got the Medicaid or the AFDC that they needed. I also worked in foster care where students had to be put into foster care. And that turned me to the point where I went into the educational system because I wasn't sure about leaving a child into a shelter home with them, although I went out to the homes to investigate and make sure it was fine, but you don't know what their nights were like. And I moved forward to the school board, and I worked under Jim Nada, Frank Petruzella, and all those that were there. I was able to work into a program where we had dropout prevention. Under Matt King Carter, when he was alive, he had a program at his school, at his church. It was on the other side of the church, where we utilized his services and our students. Instead of suspending them, we would actually have them be able to go there. Now you have a lot of churches that are doing that, where they have these programs to keep our children off the streets. And it was, that was the best part of the dropout prevention measure and truancy, to make sure that they had somewhere to go in some form of safeguard. I've also worked in the city of Pompano Beach. I worked currently now with the state attorney's office, but I didn't get my reign under Harold Pryor. I got it under Sachs. And let me tell you how that took place. Willie Lawson and myself was concerned as NAACP about the arrest of minorities and blacks and other minorities. And how come that number was so high? So we went into his office and had a meeting with him, and I was just joking with him because I knew I would probably go back to New York. And I said, well, Mike, give me a job. Let me see what you actually do. So I didn't get employed because I was going to be a normal employee coming in and searching for work. I didn't do that. I did it because I wanted to see. Because on the outside, sometimes us as Black people and minorities, we say, oh, they're just going to lock us up, the prosecution. Oh, you work with them, that's a danger. No, we represent victims, people that have been arrested. We have elderly abuse taking place in our elderly department. I worked in SBU with a sexual battery unit, and you would be surprised if you work there, what they really suffer. And then with now working in domestic violence, having women and men that have been abused. So you get a different aspect from it. I worked in felony trial unit, and I thank him for that opportunity to be able to see that it wasn't just about what people say on the outside, the myth. It was a little different in working into the confinements of the state attorney's office. I worked for the federal government very briefly, but when I ran for a seat, because of the Hatch Act law, you cannot stay in a federal position. So I sacrificed myself. I sacrificed because of the duty I wanted to serve in, even my family. And in doing that, that says a lot about a person like me. Like, why would I do that? I did it because I felt I had something to offer this great state. And I looked at people I helped to get into power. And like they say, you don't have a phone number for them. They don't call you. They won't come and see about you. And they want to stay in one area. That's not who I am. I want to be the next state senator to serve this entire district. And whatever laws I impose upon a person, it affects the entire state. And that's what we must be comfortable with and understand. This is not about just a district. You're going to affect the whole state in what you're trying to do. And when I find that people are not getting the needs of what they need, especially with veterans and mental illness, even regular students, my son majored in psychology, and that was something that he was trying to put together with juveniles. So dealing with mental illness, veteran administration issues, wanting to go to Tallahassee to reform the Medicaid that we have right now and strengthening those areas. Because when you have our seniors and they're paying their Part D, I have a mother 85, and she worked in this school system for over 35 years. And when she got out and you have to pay that bill, it's astronomical for them. Even young people that have disability from the age of 19 on up, they are under the same confinements of dealing with that, and they need it. I would like to go there to also deal with reforming our policing measures, to make sure we can revert some of those money, and not saying shut them down, because we don't want that. We'll have a civil unrest, but to make sure that we can have money put into programs within our cities, and they have that money where they can have programs, reading programs or whatever, even juvenile programs, something to teach us about law instead of allowing us to become that person that is being incarcerated. Those are some of the things I would like to do. Even our infrastructure and the failure of it. And even in our school system, we have schools that are dilapidated. And I don't just talk about Pompano, because I'm not just from Pompano. But in talking about it, Blanche Ely is begging for a gate still from years old, a roundabout. You got Charles Drew Resource Center, water's going in the building. You got Ricketts over there on Dixie Highway. All of them have the same problem. But why? Is there a misappropriation of the bond money, which I hold every school board member responsible for it, even Nora Rupert, and she's in the district that handles the North area. I hold them accountable for that. And we need to move forward to make sure anytime we are appropriating funds here, Marsha, I want to be that senator where not just coming to see you as a civil rights head on 6th Street, but to meet with every one of my local and county officials when they're dealing with monies that we appropriate in this area. Because when we go to our inner city neighborhoods, they look the same from Davie Boulevard all the way through Lake Park and Riviera in Palm Beach County. That says a lot to me. And then when I look across the pond, it doesn't look that way. So that says something to me. And having worked with people on the city diocese and trying to say that even with the CRA, I fought against that. Monies are being extorted by ministers. Monies are being extorted by individuals in the community, and they're not helping the Blacks in the community. They're helping themselves in the community by making deals. We had a case dealing with Cornerstone where they just paid about $400,000 to $500,000 to about 7 Negro preachers in Pompano Beach. So none of them are free from it, but that's what goes on. Not just there. It happens in Fort Lauderdale and Six Trunk and everywhere else. They're doing the same thing around this country. And I want to be that big gun when I go to Tallahassee to make sure those laws are tightened. Some need to be removed, but we need to make sure, and then we are appropriating funds here. We meet with our city officials and our county officials and school board people. Anybody that gets $1 from us, we need to be able to have those meetings. And I would like to set up task force when it comes to the healthcare situation, set up a task force dealing with education, because you don't know everything. We have to deal with the people that are there. Even with the policing, dealing with civil rights individuals and people that know about the laws that are affecting us and our students. I've done these things, and I would like to move forward and take that same fight to Tallahassee, but not
Miss
promising
Edden,
someone make something
let's
happen.
get some questions in. Okay. Okay.
I
Appreciate that. I know you're very passionate. And so let's, out of the things that you named, and there were many, give us your top 3 priorities that when you go there, you get sworn in, you like, this is what I'm gonna work on right now. Give us those top 3 things.
Reforming that healthcare, that Medicaid reform, And right because of COVID, I must say this, it wasn't one that I mentioned. It was the renters protection, dealing with the tenant bill of rights, people and that astronomical dollar that they are paying now and how they're being treated, the infrastructure and the transportation in South Florida, stronger buildings, the coding that we need. Those are some things I really want to work on when I get to Tallahassee from day one, because I know how to make policy and create policy.
Okay, thank you. Um, so let's go back to charter schools. What is your position on charter schools? As I explained earlier, the NAACP's position is there should be a moratorium on charter schools. What is Ms. Edden's position on charter schools?
Well, I'm not long-winded, but I'm going to say this, Marsha. I have to confess to the world that my children went to private schools and I worked in the public system. I opened up the first charter schools in Palm Beach County and Sarasota. At the time, those individuals, they were licensed and certified, and those schools were to help out the ones, like a smaller class setting. That's what they were supposed to be when we opened them up. But as we stand today, because they were under the confinements and the rules of the school district in Palm Beach County when I opened them up, but because they received funding from the school systems, I feel that they must be licensed individuals. What I would do to change the law, and then I deal with your moratorium issue of it, and change. What I would like to do is strengthen the laws to say that if charter schools are going to function, we must have all our educators to be certified and licensed to teach our children. Also, I would like to put in where they would have to be under the same guidelines as the public school system when it comes to testing and the rules of what they have to be covered under, because they get monies from the public system. That is my position on that. They don't have to be bad, but it becomes bad when millionaires can coddle and make money from these type of organizations, and it's not under the same rules of the school system, where you're not able to follow that track of what is taking place. So that's like a twofold. I agree with your moratorium, but I still had to tell you what I had done in my life with charter schools, because I did service them. I did open them up.
And you said one was in Palm Beach and one was in Sarasota?
No, they were in Palm Beach County. The first one, there was 8 that we first opened in Palm Beach County around, I want to say 2000, around 2000, 1999, 2000. During that time, they were in Sarasota. I had one there, and I opened up 8 in Palm Beach County.
And do you have any of the names of those charter schools?
No, I can get them for you. Right now, I don't have all the names of them, but I can get the names of them.
Do you know if they're still operating at all?
No, I don't. I left that company in 2001 after 9/11. Our company closed down and moved to Arizona. A funding company. It was called ABS School Services. That's who we opened them up under.
Okay. What is your understanding of HB1, the anti-protest bill?
Marsha, HB1 wants to lock me up for civil protesting, peaceful protesting. That's what I know about it. I know it's a law that is against, it really was to hurt minorities and others as we protest. I can't stand on that. Since 1964 and the civil rights laws of 65, I wouldn't be who I am. So I know that law was geared toward making sure we could not have peaceful protests and subjecting us to law enforcement or locking us up under the confines of what this governor wanted it to be.
And SB 90?
SB 90 is the law, SB 90.
Voter suppression.
Right, what you call it, the voter suppression law. That law is where the governor has now said you won't be bringing in a gang of ballots. They're going to be monitored. You have the ballot boxes out there for them to be put in. It's dealing with the registration. You're not going to be able to register a gang of people without proper information from them. That's what I know about the SB 90 law. And that it puts us in a situation where you have a limited time frame of getting the ballots in as well. I'm subjected to that now as a candidate in this race and the new rules that are set for us.
So you mentioned that this stops people from registering a gang of people. Are you saying that you think that people were does you mean, is that a good thing or
I don't agree with
negative?
this law. I don't agree with the law, but I know what it was for. It was dealing with what we call ballot harboring. I'm just going to say this. We call it ballot harboring. Last time when I ran about 8-9 months ago, or a little longer, with my Masonic brother and my personal friend, uh, Perry Thurston. If you notice the votes at the polls, we won 18 to his 14. He was able to obtain 30,000 ballots in that race. When these new laws came out, it's not that easy anymore to obtain those ballots like that. And it was alleged that some churches had their ballot night. You know, I have a lot of family in every church in the state of Florida, even in Fort Lauderdale. And those things took place. So when I'm dealing with the SB 90 law, it basically stagnated us and put laws in place that was wrong and the needs that took place in it. And it's affecting us. That's what it does. Keeps us from doing things that we once did.
Is there any part of it that works for you? We, as full disclosure, we are in court, and our portion of it has to do with line warming. If we are not successful, and the bill stands, because you know the current administration, basically controls the Florida justices, and the previous occupant of the White House has majority conservative judges there. So if we are not successful in that lawsuit, how will you work to make changes, and what changes will those be?
We need to amend the law to protect the rights of people. It has to be amended because it's taking away our voters' right in certain sentiments. It's taking us back into times where we just came from, not us, but our forefathers. And they fought very hard to be able to have us to have the right to vote. And having Trump and DeSantis in power, we need to come up with a sentiment of amending the laws that he put on the books. And it was a sad commentary, Marsha, because when we were running out there last year, our state legislators, they all knew this was a law that the governor was already working on. My concern with them and my contention, because I speak to Bobby, I spoke to Perry, I spoke to Patricia Williams about it. Why didn't we inform the people? That's my position. A lot of things happen we have no knowledge of until the last minute when it could have been taken care of. And we don't need laws that would restruct us. We need equal protections of laws.
Well, in actuality, there were plenty of town hall meetings discussing that, and there was several newspaper articles that talked about when the bill was coming and when it was actually filed. So I can push back a little bit as far as meetings that I know of that were had, and because it was coming, and quite frankly, they ain't have enough to stop it. It was a lot worse when it first came out. This is the better of the worst versions, not good, but better of those worst versions that were going on. But with those few Democratic votes, because those are only people that were going to vote against it. They didn't have enough
Exactly.
firepower. Just not at all.
Mhm.
So I think sometimes we have to do a better job ourselves, our community, of getting involved in stuff. We like right now
You're right. You're
voting.
right. I stand correct.
In
I stand
numbers.
correct on that. I'm gonna be honest with you, my sister. I stand corrected with that, Marsha. But I'm gonna tell you something. Right after that election, and let me say to you, and this ain't got nothing to do with this interview. After what I suffered and not knowing my son was bleeding for 3 months, I have been like, I try to inform people, but I spend more time at the cemetery than I do sometimes anywhere else just to try to mend through that because he was one of those people that knew about all those laws. He was one that would pander through it. So forgive me on that. Like I said, I do stand corrected, but I know in certain cities, people did not know about it because I spoke with Kings Point. I spent a lot of time in Tamarack. I spoke to individuals and even in the Coconut Creek, Winmore area, even in Pompano, not just Pompano, because you know they're gonna be informed and not informed. It's what it is. But when you deal with people like in Palm Air and stuff, a lot of them didn't know, and that's what I was saying about that measure. That I would like to make sure, and I know what I would do as a senator: keep all my people informed. I don't mind marching with you, walking with you, coming to see about you. Even in this race, I got a call today. I was going to send it to Bobby. about a woman telling me she wanted a wheelchair, and I'm trying to get her to vote. And it turned out to helping her opposed to, myself, but it was okay. So thank you for that.
Thank you. You spoke earlier about the juvenile justice, particularly in Broward County.
Mhm.
I don't have to tell you, we got some problems. And one of the concerns that we have is the age of our regional juvenile detention center. If you are elected, what would you do to help us improve the conditions at the juvenile detention center?
Well, we start with the infrastructure portion of it. I worked for the state, and the juvenile justice system has been looking the same since I worked there, and I'm 55 years old. And also with the workers, I know there was situations in the past with our workers in dealing with our juveniles in there. Uh, my thing was better training for them, to be honest with you. And also dealing with the juveniles that's in there. When I worked in the school board and they would go there, we would actually have them set up where they can even have learning. Like they wouldn't miss the educational settings. They would have that within the confinements of that. Those would be some of the things I would like to push forward to make sure they go through, making sure my staff is better qualified and serviced well. I know it's a very tedious thing, making sure the juveniles are protected and treated properly in their settings, and also being able to give them whatever needs they may have. Some of the kids in there, they're not bad children. Some of them have, I worked at Rogers Middle School. A lot of my kids came from Sixth Trunk. I used to live on Sixth Trunk on 15th Avenue. And the things that they needed the most was just to have protections and family and jobs, to keep them out of that system. And that is something that I would like to do. The direct filing of our students, that is something that I would like to do as a senator. That was one of my pet peeves last time when I ran, because I work in the state attorney's office, although I'm not an attorney. To have them direct file, that was something I wanted to champion, to make sure that did not take place with them, because they don't even understand it at those levels.
Well, there was, um, let me just say that under Mike Satz, the direct file was one of the worst in the nation, certainly the worst in the state.
Yes,
To date, that ain't changed.
I know.
And so, that is certainly not a good direction to
We,
be going
but
in.
as legislators, we need to put laws on the books to help them change it. Because one thing Michael Sachs used to always say, well, the legislators needs to change it. That's the same thing with your current. If he's not doing it, work with the legislator to create laws to help. Like I said, just because you're the elected, the source, you still can use the task force. The state attorney can work with the legislator to say, look, let's try to curtail that, even though he's the prosecuting heir. It doesn't matter. We need to work together. And if he doesn't want to work with the person, with me or whomever, I'm hoping it's me, then guess what? We put laws on the books, because the laws start within the state in Tallahassee with the legislator. And like Michael Sachs used to say, oh, you change this and then we'll follow. They just want to follow the law, but we want to make sure it's mandated within the law when they're dealing with our juveniles, because Black children are always up filed quicker than any other race. That they get, and let me just give you a little story, not a lot, because I don't want to be on here a long time if I don't have to. There was a situation. You had a Black young lady, went to court on the same trespassing as the same charge as a white person. And I was in that courtroom with H.T. Smith under Diaz. The white guy got up and talked about, oh, he didn't mean it and all this and that. And Diaz let it go. When it came to the little Black girl, he did not let it go. And that's what we see in the judicial system a lot. It is a discriminatory practice, I believe, and I work in a setting, but this is how I feel. And then we have our judges, not all of them, but some of them, they don't have a sensitivity or even the amount of a training or understanding. Some of them, when they make these laws, and we are the penalty, we're the ones penalized, the greatest, even when they have the same situations over and over again. Because sometimes when people running for seats to be judges, they're either a former state attorney, or you might get very few that have been defense attorneys. And we got a state attorney in mind. I would hope it would change when you're on the dais, but sometimes that is not the case. So you're absolutely right. It was worse under Michael Sass. That's why I said to you how I got into his office was because we were against what was happening to Blacks as a whole under his reign. And I went in to see what you're doing. What are we really doing here? Don't think it was an easy ride for me. It's never pretty. It's not even pretty for me being there now. And I'm sitting there. So
Let me
it's
just
not a
say
good
that
thing.
there are currently rules on the books for direct file, but it is up to that state attorney
It's
how he
discretionary.
applies it. And I could
It's
say
discretion.
that in a conversation with Maria, who was the person making the decision to direct file, she had a justification for every single one. And of course, I think maybe all but one of those were Black children. And so the state attorneys have the ability to make a
Yeah, they
call.
have discretion. They have
And
the
they make
discretion.
it. They just rolling with it, you know. So that is, the
But you know what,
judges.
Marsha, when I get to Tallahassee and I know what you do and I know what you stand for, we always have to have, I would want somebody on my team that knows civil rights, not just that, even someone, even Alona Holmes, she's from Deerfield. I believe she is, been a lawyer been in the judicial system a long time as a judge. We have to have, like I said, people say what we need to do. It's just like me. If I'm going to have surgery on my gallbladder, I don't want to go to someone that's going to give me surgery on my ear. So you need people to build a task force where you can be able to have different minds. We come together with the same knowledge and try to create the laws, the best laws possible. And if people had done that, that would be something we should do. And I welcome those opportunities to work with people on the outside to create the best laws for this state and for our county. And you're right, they do have discretion.
Um, you mentioned earlier you were talking about the work that you had done at the schools, and you mentioned kind of a early what we now call promise thing. Um, so the reason that we have promise is because we looked at over a decade worth of data, and the data proved what Ben was a very nice man, just not perhaps effective when it came down to doing the right thing. So, because over 10 years of data showed that Black children were suspended, expelled, and arrested in Broward County schools at a higher rate than three times, sometimes more than their white counterpart, there was a need for promise, which brought about systemic change. And one of the things that happened was it wasn't just about the arrest not happening, because there may be a need for service of some type.
Right.
And so, how do you differentiate promise from civil citation from diversion here in Broward County?
The civil citation ensured that the youth misdemeanor offenses were appropriately addressed. They had with community service, mental illness type things. That's what that was geared toward. But then you talk about the promise program, that was to make sure that they not being put out of the school, but like an external type suspension type measure. Like for instance, say if you, like when I talked about Matt King Carter and his facility, they might not have been in a regular setting, but that's where they were able to go. And now we talk about what we just said. You said the promise program,
I said
because I'm like talking
promise, civil citation, and
in the juvenile justice.
diversion.
Okay, and diversion or juvenile diversion.
We're talking about juvenile diversion, juvenile civil
Oh, okay,
citation, and promise.
right. The juvenile diversion program was dealing with the mental illness of some of them, but they can also receive counseling, community service. That's what that was dealing with, the juvenile citation situation, and supposedly putting them in situations that they shouldn't be in. In the promise program, we did that, well, you all finished it, dealing with them being arrested in the schools. Opposed to being arrested, they were able to be in external programs, like outside of the confinements of the schools. Like we have one location in Pompano Beach, I think it's off of is that Banks Road? I think it's Banks. Then you have a couple in other areas where the
For
students are.
promise?
That's for the promise program.
I don't know. I think we have
Am
one.
I mixing them up?
I think you are. We just have one site for promise.
Yeah, one site for the promise program.
Right.
Okay.
And then the civil citation is ever changing. And we did have the support of the current occupant of Senate District 33. So we
Right, but it reduced juvenile delinquencies. It was a part of that. And it served its purpose well.
Promise was not a part of
That's
Promise
juvenile.
was
No, the juvenile. I'm talking about the juvenile citation one, the civil citation one for them. So you're saying Perry supported the Promise program or the juvenile civil citation program?
both.
Okay.
And
All
so
right.
we would, and what has happened is the legislature has changed to basically make Promise a a civil citation, which is supposedly pre-arrest, but sometimes not so much. So it Promise still exists, but not in the way in which we designed it some time ago. But it's
Removed.
totally different
So
than
they amended.
anything. It
So
was
they
anything that
changed.
was. Hmm?
You're saying they changed it from the original
I'm saying
formation. What you
no, no.
had.
I'm saying that the law changed as it pertains to reporting. Promise
Okay.
is a living, breathing document, so it was never meant to just stay the same. It was supposed to move as we needed to strengthen it and change it, that sort of thing. So I was making the point that it was three different things, and we did have the support of Thurston, and so we were certainly looking for, if you are elected, continued support as we move to
Of
support
course.
children.
Of course. And if it needs to be strengthened, we'll do that too. There would be no need to try to get rid of it or anything of that nature, but also to strengthen it. And of course, they have the support of it.
Well, the other side disagrees with you, Miss Edden. They have spent the
Well,
last.
I'm not on the other side, Marsha. I just have to
No, no,
fight for
no.
what
It's
I
no, no.
believe
What
in.
I was saying was you'll have to deal with the other side, and that has a fight that will continue as we move forward. Because you and I agree that there's no need to change it or to eliminate it, but the other side does not, and so that's a fight that you would be in from the day you step on camp on the grounds there.
Well, my ability to mitigate and mediate situations and to work on other sides, I think will be just fine. Trust me. And if I'm not fine, I know how to reach back to my people and their communities to let them know what we're going to be suffering with. Or if I need their help, what I need them to come and stand with me on.
And
That
so,
was my
how would you then strengthen strictly juvenile civil citation? And let's just deal with your district in Broward.
when I say strengthen it with the juvenile part of it, I'm with the COVID situation that's out there, our kids, they're not even something has happened with this COVID thing. I don't know if it's a mindset thing, but the mental illness that I've seen, and I know it from firsthand. I won't divulge how in dealing with a juvenile that has faced these things, well, with the person, but it has taken us over. And I know someone that I've been dealing with constantly is in situations with this juvenile issue of even possible arrest. And it's like it's a mental illness thing more. So that's the part I would like to strengthen, the mental illness portion of it, making sure there's counseling that's taking place for them in that aspect of dealing with the juvenile citations because it falls under that umbrella. Is why I'm using it. Not saying, okay, this is why they're being arrested on the juvenile citation, but saying because this is one of the confinements of what we provide under it, the mental illness part of that having that counseling sessions for them, being able to have, like you say, it's in the community services that they receive. And those are some things I would like to be able to strengthen.
And tell me what your position is on mandatory masking, period. Not just in our schools, but all around.
I think it should be mandatory masking. I won't get into the vaccination part of that because when you get to that portion, we live in a democracy, not a dictatorship. But I do think it should be mandatory masking, especially for a person like myself, because people have other situations going on. I work in an industry where, as I don't feel protected, and I work in the state attorney's office. I don't feel protected from going in the inside to the outside. We've had a lot of COVID outbreak there. Not that they're bringing it there or what have you, but it has been a concern. Even in the school systems, my family members, they're teachers and what have you, and principals. And when they're dealing with it, they were even talking about that today, how they didn't feel safe, even with just the masking. But I think it should be a mandatory mask mandate set across the state. Although I know the man on the other side does not agree with that. We know that. But I think in this district, we should have mandatory masks until we find out what this animal is that's out there. That, I mean, killing you, losing all these people in our families. I'm sure we all have suffered with that. So yes, I'm in agreement with that.
And what about in our schools? Have you spoken to any of our educators or our admins when it comes to knowing that it is now against the law for the district to mandate masking of the students? I believe a decision was made to do the other day that had to do with mandating masks for adults, and then it became teachers, and then it became visitors and that sort of thing. So, what is your position on?
Well,
Mandating masks?
I spoke to two educators today, like I said, my sister, and I spoke to a couple of friends of mine that are in the education system because we talk about it. And they have shared with me that they don't feel safe. They say even if they need more space in their classrooms, what I'm hearing. They want to fight for more spaces or have less students in their classroom. They don't feel safe. Even those that have been fully vaccinated. And this is a conversation I had about 2 hours before I spoke with you, because we were talking about masking and they were saying the outbreaks that's taking place in their schools. And they don't feel safe, even with the mask on, because the outbreak is still happening. And if you got 30 kids in a classroom, you need to do something about that. If you're saying 6 feet away, that might not be enough room for them. So they're telling me that they don't feel safe in the classrooms, even with the maskings. They want alternatives to be taking place. Some feel that they need to go back on and doing, like, on the internet with the students. And my grandchildren were exposed to COVID, and one of them, he's 10 years old, and he's so concerned about getting vaccinated and about the COVID. He know more about it than I do, and even wearing the masks. So it's a thing for them. They're very uncomfortable with what's going on in the school system right now. Not just the school system though, but around, because you have government entities as well. We have the same problem that they're having, but theirs is a bigger suffrage in a sense, because they're dealing with students. They don't know if they're bringing the COVID in or what have you. And the masses being mandated is another thing. So they're not pleased with it. And I got that call today in regards to the school system.
And so you mentioned vaccination, being vaxxed, and you think there's any entity, any group that should be mandated before you come in to work with, or should they be issued in a hospital or say assisted living facility? Is there any industry where you think that a mask or vaccination should be mandated?
Now you're going to get me in trouble, but I'm going to say it. In the nursing homes, I think that they need to be vaccinated, because when you're in the nursing home, they're in there. You must be bringing it in. We have some government facilities where they're not making it a mandatory issue. Like with my job, they tell us to get vaccinated. That's our option. But if we're not, they want us to be tested continuously. But my thing is, how are you ensuring that the other employees are being tested? That's the key. That's not, you don't know if that's happening. We don't have someone saying, oh, did you get tested this day, that day, because you refused to have a vaccination. But certain areas, entities, I believe they should. Even in the, Marsha, even in the nurse, not just nursing, the hospitals. My niece worked with the CDC. They are vaccinated. But then again, we get into this issue of the Constitution and them having the right to say no. If we lived in a dictatorship, yes. But my personal contention, I believe that they should be vaccinated. But people are not going to do that. They're not going to do that.
Okay, so we've got
Control in this country.
about 14 minutes left. A time for a couple of more questions. One of the questions from the audience was, what is, they said to ask you to clarify your statement on being part of the creation of the Promise Program.
I know where that comes from. Let me tell you they want to know what I did with the Promise Program. This is what I did. It wasn't called the Promise Program. What I did was, when students were being arrested in our schools, in particular, it was Dillon High School and Blanche Ely. I set up an organization under Edden Consultant Services in Letty. I formed a meeting throughout the districts of Palm Beach, Broward, and Dade County, and people came, along with Sheriff Lamberti at the time. It was right before Scott Israel won the seat when he moved forward, making sure this took place with you all. And what we did was have people to come out, because I would be called to schools, stopping law enforcement from arresting our students in our school system, because they should have never been called unless there was something, a gun or somebody in that type of trouble. It should have stayed with professional standards of those security officers that were there. And we had security officers, we had one officer on campus. And right now, some schools don't even have an officer on campus. So what we did was we formed that meeting at E. Pat Larkins, and people came from everywhere. And we had a conversation with the state attorney's office. They had someone from misdemeanor there. We had Sheriff Lamberti there. We had local leadership there. Ben Williams was there. Like I said, this was back in the time when he was on the dais. It wasn't Miriam. And we had these meetings to try to figure out what can we do to combat these situations, to make sure, and the state attorneys was saying, push it back to professional standards, because they didn't want to police these situations for the school board and having these students arrested and sending them out and just throwing the cases out anyway. That is my portion of that's the ingredients we set. Let me give an example to you. It's like Rosa Parks. She wasn't the first person that sat in the back of the bus. It was a lady in Virginia. But because of Rosa Parks and the NAACP with Martin Luther King, it became known of what she went through. So that's the same thing that happens with us all the time when we're fighting for people and doing things. Other people get together, they make it a law, they find something they do without inviting us to it. And you never know about us as if we're the sleeper, when we're actually the one that put the ingredients together. So that was my position and my role as former legal redress chairperson for the North Broward County NAACP, and also a business owner. And then I worked in the system as well. So
Okay.
that is what I do.
I don't want you to run out of time before you tell people how to help. But let me just say, for the record, what you described is not promise. Promise started based on. Let me finish. Based
I
on
didn't say anything.
data. Yeah, based on data of, and we're gonna say black children. It was black, then Hispanic, and then white. Um, and over 10 years worth. Nobody, nada, and nobody else would listen and do anything about it until Runty came and sat down with the data and his own people to determine what was really happening there. And then it took another year to make sure it was written from scratch, nuts and bolts. So that's where we came up with, and it's an acronym, but it was to provide and find money, which only Runty did, nobody else did, to help students. So it was about the arrest, but that wasn't all of what it was about. And
Right.
that's where that we did. So I'm not saying that you didn't do anything. I'm saying that what you described was not promised, but the data.
Well, I never said I did promise something. Your questionnaire person asked me that. I told them what I did regarding students being arrested in the school system. I didn't say I did something with the title of that organization of what you did with your group.
And I understand that you did, but
Understand
we were
what
just
they
talking about
said,
what
correct.
promise was. So I don't want to run it. I wanted you to tell us, take this last minute, tell us how we support you, how we reach you, how we donate, and anything else that you want to tell us about your campaign.
Well, you can go to Raise the Money. That is how we raise our money through the campaign. It'll say Terry Ann Williams in candidate for state senate under Raise the Money if you would like to give a donation. My website is www.terryann4d33.com.
Repeat that.
Right now, Terry Ann 4D Democrat 33.com. What we're doing right now, we've always been grassroots in our quest to try to obtain the Senate seat or any other seat. We are asking for volunteers if they want to come. If not, individuals that want to work on the campaign, they can. I do want to say this to stand corrected. This is, as the previous candidate said, the worst campaign I've ever had. The worst candidates that have been in the races, not just my race, the congressional race has put a thumb in my race. And I have documentation to show that. I think I text you that. And there are people on the ground that are threatening each other, but they come from Sheila McCormick's campaign that is also working with my opponent. And that happened with two individuals, Teresa Black and Colleen Duncan, both hired by Sheila McCormick, who do not have a relationship with each other. It didn't start today. It started 100 years ago. Has nothing to do with me nor Osgood. And so, yes, we have been hearing that this is Terry doing these things. One thing people need to understand about me, I work every day in a building where I can't even talk about politics. So I'm off for a few days regarding the election. So it's nothing that we started. Everybody that's on my team are decent and in order. And I know who they are. So they have had attacks, but it didn't come from Osgood because her people are not there. They're a team. So the team is Sheila McCormick and Osgood's people. Okay. They're one and the same people paid by Sheila McCormick with where they got the little pack. And I'm going to address the issue on a card because I told it was mentioned. There was a card put out by the Haitian NAACP, National Association for Haitians. What they did was put out a card and they listed Javante on that from Palm Beach as a state senator. The man said that they all asked to be on a card. I didn't ask to be on a card. And putting people on a card with a federal candidate, the law says that the FEC, they have to, if they put over $1,000, they have to be registered. This company is not registered with the FEC. It's in the state of Florida. And this is where the problem arose, Marsha. This is why the issues are on the ground, because you have people that are my family members and other people's family members working for Miss McCormick, and she wants them to pass out a certain card that they're not going to pass out. They'll pass out her card. So the conflict starts with the congressional candidate. And I want to say this here. If Al-C was alive, he would never have been engaged in such rhetoric that's going on, egregious acts that are taking place, and lies that have been let's say very disingenuous actions that have been taking place in this race. Now I can complain too.
Ms. Edden, you have 2 minutes. You want to continue talking
2
about
minutes.
other people?
Well, I need you to, I'm asking you all to vote for me because I have given service all my life, not in just one setting of education, but in the judicial system. I've done that as well. EEOCs, I've done those things. I have a compilation of myself, very diverse, where I have worked with people of all rights to fight for justice, fairness, and equality. And it sets me apart from my opponent because I'm not stuck in one area. My abilities are far-reaching. I'm a mediator, Supreme Court certified. I'm a mitigator. I've done all things in my life that has impacted the little man in every aspect of your life. And I'm asking you for your vote. My name is Terry Ann Williams Edden, your next state senator. Thank you for having me, Marsha.
There are 3 questions. I think someone put them in the chat as well. If you wanted to answer those, I would suggest maybe put it on your website, and then you could answer those as well. If not, they could be emailed to you. So that there were 3 what I thought very good questions. And it was from an anonymous thing, so we can get those emails so you have an opportunity to answer those, just as I did for Dr. Osgood.
Okay.
All right, and with that said, we are going to go back to our chair of religious affairs, and certainly with all that we've heard, we know that folk have an opportunity to be an educated voter in this Democratic primary. I would hope that, number one, that people would go vote. Quite frankly, the numbers are very disappointing. We can't blame other folk for us not going out to vote. And number 2, with all of the back and forth and all of the allegations that are going on, we just got to do better. I mean, this is one election. Whoever is the person who eventually wins in March will have to run again. So I would hope that we would not continue on to carry on this way throughout all of 2022, because it's going to be a long year otherwise. Minister Edwards, if you would be so kind as to pray us out of here.
Madam President, thank you. Let us go to the throne of grace. Eternal God and Father, we are thankful for this opportunity, Lord, that you have provided. A time for us to receive information needed that we might be informed voters. Now, God, as we prepare to depart from this call, but never from your presence, we ask, Father, that you would bless those candidates that are running. Help them, God, to run a race with dignity, and if elected, to serve with integrity. God, we ask that you would continue to be the wind beneath the wings of the NAACP. God, we ask that you would shower your blessings upon all persons on tonight that are in attendance. God, we look to you in these uncertain times that you would give us guidance, oh Lord, give us protection and provision. We pray your peace upon us. In Christ Jesus' name, we ask it all. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone. Please get out and vote. The numbers are dismal, and tell everybody you know. Vote for the candidate of your choice. Early voting runs through a Sunday. So please make sure everybody you know get out and vote. And with that, thank you, and join the fight for freedom if you haven't already. The only thing that's missing from the struggle is you. Have a good evening. Thank you.